I'm not sure if I can do this. Come on, work. No! This is Mini Jam, a bi-weekly game jam where you have one goal, make a game in 72 hours. Now, I'm no stranger to game jams. I've participated in quite a few, although most of those were tri-jams, where you have 3 hours to make a game. And just doing the maths, I have about 24 times more time to work on this one, so this should end up being a lot better than my previous ones. Now, mini jams are fairly simple. They have two elements that you're meant to include. The first is the theme, which is announced before the jam starts. This is optional but highly recommended, and the theme this time around was light, which is one of the easier ones to include. The other is the limitation. Unlike the theme, this has to be included and is part of your score, and you don't want to leave a bunch of points on the table. This week's limitation was speed is key, and with the theme and limitation, I began planning my game. The first part of making a game was planning, obviously. I decided on a platformer where you're trapped in a dark room with only a flashlight, and you have to use the light to find where the platforms are to escape. With that decided, I figured I'd need some assets. Now, in most of the game jams I've competed in before, I've made my own assets. They're never anything amazing, considering I often don't have too much time to make them, but I wanted to win this time, and the time it takes to make the assets adds up pretty quick. So I decided to borrow some from online. I decided on these 4 asset packs: basic character model, castle background with spikes and floating platforms, and music and sound effects, because I can't do those. Now that I had the assets I needed, I decided to get to work on the game. The first thing I added was the character movement, and this was easy considering it's just detecting when the key is pressed and giving the player some speed to go along with it. Next up was the flashlight. I had to make my own sprite for this, and while the first version looks out of place, I made a new one later that fits the theme much better. And with the flashlight made, I got the lighting in. I followed this tutorial from GameMaker, and while it doesn't have shadows because it's not really that advanced, it works well for the game, and I finished up by making it so you have to hold down left click in order to move the light around. Then I got this collection of background sprites that I can use to add a bit more life to the game. I mean, look at this level before the background and after, it makes it look so much better. Then I added in some torches, these placed at the start and end of each level, and mainly function as a way to give you a bit more light. Without them, you'd pretty much be searching for ages trying to find the door. Speaking of doors, I added them. They have a glow around them, and when the player reaches it, they do a little victory dance before moving on to the next level. I then made the first 2 levels. They're nothing much. I mean, the first level is just 3 jumps that acts as a tutorial, but the second level actually has some jumps that might take a few attempts to clear. Not me though, because I'm a parkour god. And if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to like and subscribe, because only 5% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, and if you could, it would help me out a lot. Anyway, back to coding. Next, I added in death. There are 2 ways you can die, the first being if you run out of health. You have 3 hearts, and you lose one whenever you touch a spike. The other is by running out of time, and when you die by either way, you restart the level. Then I decided to try and fix a few issues I had with how the rooms were structured, and accidentally deleted all progress on the first 2 rooms I'd made, meaning I had to go back and remake them from scratch, although they ended up being the same. Next, I added in the timer. It started by giving you 20 seconds to finish the level. I ended up lowering it to 10 though, because I felt 20 was too lenient. Then I remade the flashlight sprite to this, which is a lot better than the previous one, and I got the lights to turn on and off when you right click, adding some more difficulty to the game, as you can't move when the light is on. Then I made some more levels. The third one introduces spikes. If you touch one, you lose 1 health and get shoved back. There might be some speedrunning technique with these, but I don't know. And I also got the 4th level, which gives you 2 options. One that's quicker but has a tricky jump, and another that takes longer but you're pretty much guaranteed to make it to the end. Let me just say, designing these levels was some of the most fun I've had making a game. Like, I love coding, but being able to see these towers of boxes just felt so rewarding, which isn't something I felt making some of my other games. Could also just be because the levels look so good. I finished up levels 5, 6, and 7, which are just more difficult versions of the same formula, although level 7 is interesting because it has a little shortcut here that skips 70% of the level, decreasing the time it takes from around 8 seconds to 3. Next, I put in the music. It's just some tracks from this GameMaker asset pack, but it fits the theme of the game well, and in case you're wondering, here's the music. I then figured that there wasn't much interesting happening in the game, so I added moving spikes, which were pretty simple to add and are pretty interesting. While they're used slightly in level 8 as a replacement for normal spikes, level 9 is where they shine and is probably the hardest level, mainly because of this spike tunnel, where there's just moving spikes on the top and bottom, so you have to time it just right in order to avoid them. Then was level 10, which is just a combination of everything from the previous levels, tricky jumps and a bunch of platforms with moving spikes. Most of the game finished, I added in a proper health bar. It has 3 hearts and each time you get hit, one disappears. I made the screens for the start and end of the game. The end screen is just a large open area with a bunch of platforms that kicks you back to the start of the game after a few seconds. And the start screen is the same as pretty much every other start screen I've made, except this one has light. I then finished up the game by adding some sound effects for turning the light on and off, jumping and getting hit by the spikes. And with all that finished, I uploaded the game to itch and awaited the results, although after the jam had finished, I realized that if I wanted a chance of winning, I'd need to create a web version. So I did. It only took about half an hour and it went up a few days after the jam finished, but it works and only has one issue that I know of. And with that done, I sat back and waited for the results to come in, and a few days later, I got them. And 55th out of 128, which is just better than the top 50%. Although in my defense, something that itch does is lower scores when they get less ratings, which makes sense after one that gets all 5-star ratings should be penalized when there's another that gets 20 4-star ratings. Now, if you compared the raw score to the other games, which might not be 100% fair, but that doesn't really matter, it would place 29th between these two games. But what I'm really happy about is visuals or presentation as it's scored, which would be tied with 9. And I'll take that as a win, even though I didn't make the assets. I also learned a few things, mainly that you need a web build if you want any chance of winning, and an actually interesting display image if you want to get ratings. And that's how it turned out, not the clean sweep I was hoping for, mainly because I waited on the HTML build, but for my first non-tri-jam game jam that's an actual game jam, I feel I did pretty well. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you might like this one where I remade Balatro in 1 week. And before you go, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.